Yeah.
Heard somebody say, pray you meet somebody
Somebody
who
told me
loves
that.
you as much as think he loves the uprights or something like that.
Yeah, I've seen some curls.
Well,
What a world, what a world.
ladies and gentlemen, since we're all here, let's call this meeting to order. If you would please rise and face the flag, recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We've got priorities out of the way. We should begin with the oath of office. Mr. Mayor?
All right. So before we do this, I would, again, just like to thank all of you for the time that you have given this group, the Redevelopment Commission. You all have been instrumental in a lot of the progress of this community and the growth of this community. Through your actions, through this board, we've just done some really neat things in the community, and the Redevelopment Commission is an integral part of the growth of this community. So I personally want to thank all of you for the time you've given this group. You don't have to come here once a month and spend an hour. You do it because you really understand and appreciate the importance of making good decisions. And again, I'm thankful that you have all agreed to go another year. And with that, I'd ask you all to raise and stand and raise your right hands and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Indiana, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and diligently discharge my duties as a member of the Redevelopment Commission for the City of Warsaw, Indiana, according to the law and the best of my ability. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You guys all dressed up? Can we do a group picture with the mayor?
Sure.
Kind of spread out.
All right, let's go over by the, you want me to just stand in front of them here, or you want me to recreate this, or what do you want to do?
Let's just line up.
Okay.
How you doing?
Good. Are you doing better? You look good.
Yeah, I'm doing better.
All right.
Let's get a picture taken.
Yeah, if you just want to place those on the chairs behind you or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Rick, you want to come over and the mayor will slide behind you? Okay.
I grew up near Huntington, Indiana.
Oh, gotcha.
And then
All right, thank you guys.
All right.
lived in Indianapolis.
Very good. So if you'd sign these right away, pass them down to him.
My family and I moved here 6 years ago.
Yeah, I lived in Chicago for about 7.
Yeah.
Cut out of town for a while. It's a good place.
Nice pen. Can I have that?
All right.
I have an extra in the office.
You have an extra one laying down somewhere.
They were all gifts from one of the companies.
Nope, I got it.
We looked and they were so nice that Sam started buying them for me because they were just really nice.
They are nice.
Yeah, they're very nice.
Well.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, appreciate that. Looking forward to another spectacular year. We should begin with the election of officers. And we have to elect tonight the president, vice president, and secretary. Kim is the recording secretary, so that's not an elected office. So we'll begin with nominations of president.
Normally, some boards, especially with more people on it, a bigger board, it's good to probably rotate officers and stuff like that.
I agree with that.
However, I think you guys have done such a good job. What do you think?
I would agree, yeah, unless they want to switch, but I like you two at the helm and Kim helping us.
I too have a great deal of appreciation for your just volunteering basically to serve, and trust both of you guys, your judgment and commitment to this board, so I appreciate it. I'm in favor of no change. I have no concerns. I just, whatever you guys would like as our leaders. So, thank you.
Thank you. They're very nice, kind words.
I don't anticipate any changes.
Is that all right with you?
So I would make a motion that we keep officers as they are currently.
We have a motion on the floor to keep all officers as is, president.
President Tim and Vice President Rick.
Vice President.
Kim is the secretary.
Yeah.
No, I'm recording secretary. You have to
Recording.
you have to elect a secretary.
We do not currently have
I don't know, I don't remember, so.
so we do need to nominate a secretary as a formality.
Well, before I make this second, George, if you'd like to take that title.
I don't,
Is that all right, or would you like to commit
George
to that?
might be it. Are you it? Are you the secretary?
you know what, I think I was.
I think
in
you
the
are.
past.
I think you
But
are.
but to someone else, you can be the secretary, so it's up to you.
I like the idea of you doing it. If you would amend your motion to add George, I'll second it.
So amended.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I'll second the motion with the amendment to have George serve as secretary.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Yeah.
We have
Thanks.
a motion as amended to officers, President Tim Meyer, Vice President Rick Snodgrass, and Secretary George Clements. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. We are elected. Congratulations, everyone. Moving on. Approval of the redevelopment meeting schedule. You should have all received a copy of that as well. I noted that there was only one exception to the first Monday of each month, and that would be Labor Day weekend. And rightfully so, we, as typical, we would delay it 1 week since it falls on a holiday. Other than that, it's first Monday of every month. So I'll entertain a motion to accept as, unless there's any objection.
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
Second by Jeff. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. All right. Minutes from the previous meeting. You all should have seen that in your packet as well. So I'll have some comments on that later, but are there any adjustments, corrections, deletions? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote to approve.
I didn't see anything, did you,
No.
Mike? I'll make a motion to accept the previous minutes.
George makes a motion to accept as presented.
Second.
We have a second from Jeff. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. That motion carries.
Now, as the secretary, did you type those minutes yourself?
Yes, I have to.
He
I'll recall.
He deferred to the recording secretary, I believe. Okay, approval of claims.
So do you guys go individually and vote on each one, or do you do all of them?
All of them.
We do them all, but
Could you get me some more
I'll
coffee?
go down through the list of them, just to explain what each each is,
Yes.
each one it refers to, rather?
So the first claim is for Troyer Group. It is in the amount of $617.50. This was for the work they did on North Point Drive for a community crossings grant. The second claim we have is H.J. Umbaugh. That is in the amount of $637.92. This was for costs associated with printing the final official statement in regards to the issuance of a lease bond, or lease rental bond. This was for the northern and eastern TIF districts. The next claim is Structure Point in the amount of $7,585.53. This was for the Buffalo Street project. This is for them finishing up the plaza design as well as wetland delineation. Rock Hill Pinnock is the next claim on the list. It is in the amount of $1,670.67. This was for the paperwork related to the gas station on 15, the JPJ Food Mart. The next claim is for Great Craft Signs. That is the amount of $85,533.60, and that was for the sign in the Tech Park. Wessler Engineering in the amount of $49,726.14. This was for the Airport Industrial Park sanitation sewer design. And the last claim we have on the list is Troyer Group again, the amount of $25,803.75, and that is for the design on 300 North for the roundabout.
Is that design work completed now? For the roundabout? Do you know?
I am not 100% sure on that. I have to look at that.
That's,
I believe that's, we're trying to do that next year, so I believe that would be, they'd be nearing completion of the design work. I'm not
okay.
sure how much.
We should
more.
be getting some prints and layouts of that.
Yeah.
Structure now that it's complete. Maybe at the next meeting we can review those.
Yeah, that's what I have to look at.
All right, any questions for me about the claims as presented?
Just because Scott's bill's in there, out of curiosity, how long do you think it'll take? What's the time frame on that Quick Mart at Central Park?
Well, I think you're gonna hear a little later in the meeting.
Oh,
that
okay.
It somewhat has, we're trying to acquire the property. It can either be acquired by agreement of the seller, or we may have to litigate pursuing it in the eminent domain
Yeah, okay.
and pursuing that in court. But we're currently trying to reach an agreement with the property owner short of pursuing it in eminent domain.
I didn't have any questions besides that.
I just make a comment. I noticed on a lot of these invoices that we get, they have the total project amount, and then the amount that they're billing us for, they have the percentage of that amount, and I find that very helpful to know where we are in the progress of the projects. I don't know if that's a stipulation we've put in there, or Jeremy, or, but I like that. I appreciate knowing that. So, that's my comment.
Yeah, that is, I agree with that. I think that's an important factor to have it available to us so we know where we stand.
All you gotta do is glance at it. We don't have to search or,
We'll go back and look at through records, and try to figure out what it,
yeah, it's right there.
yep.
Typically on state claim forms and some larger project claim forms, that's a requirement.
Yeah,
I'm not sure on smaller projects that it has to be, but I agree with you. I think it's very helpful.
it is, yeah.
And typically, we have someone reviewing these projects, no matter how large or small. They're just making sure they're only getting paid for the amount of work that's been done to date. So that information is typically always on there. I just know some of the state forms, it's obviously in a very specific area, and it is a very helpful designation to know, which is it's good time.
Okay. Any other questions, comments about the claims presented?
Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve the claims.
George makes a motion to approve claims as presented, and Mr. Snodgrass has seconded that. So if there's any further discussion, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay. The other item on the new business, under new business, is the North Detroit Street purchase offer.
So this is circling back to the JPJ Food Mart. We have prepared an offer based on an assessment that we received for that property. We're currently in the process of acquiring a second assessment of that property, but this is the initial offer that we would be able to make to the property owner. Is in the amount of $150,000.
So you can do that without a second appraisal?
Correct. If you can.
So we're required to make a good faith offer to begin this process. So we had an appraisal done so that we'd have a starting point of where we thought a good faith offer could come from. So we've made them a good faith offer. To actually tender them the proceeds, we need to have a second appraisal done before we could do that, and then it would be an average of 2. The statute also allows, if they would like, the seller to have a third appraisal done at their expense, then we would average the 3 appraisals and come up with a number there. But that's where we're at. We had to get the first appraisal to make them a good faith offer, and we've done that under the qualified offer that we sent them. We've got a second appraisal ordered. We've started some negotiations with them, but that's where we're at. And we're guessing, we think we chose a good appraiser to make the initial appraisal. We assume it's going to be ballpark 150 regardless of who appraises it. But the statute requires, before we actually spend any money, that we get 2 appraisals. But it also protects in some ways the seller if they want to get their own, and they can ask for a third, and they would all get averaged into the final number if we're able to reach an agreement with them.
Now, is this the filling station?
Yeah, the gas station just at the entryway of Central Park off of 15. It's been vacant for a little while.
So will we get a copy of the agreement when you come?
Well, so currently what's the timeline has been, we became interested in the property. We had it appraised. We got appraisal for $150,000. We sent them then our offer saying this is our good faith offer. We've recently had some negotiations with them. We're trying to work towards seeing what kind of an agreement we can come up with them. And we're waiting for our second appraisal so that if we're able to reach an agreement with them, we have the statutory approval to actually make the offer. They're considering whether they get a third appraisal as well. So we're kind of, we brought it before you guys today because you're the Redevelopment Commission, and then eventually you have the say-so on whether we proceed with this, but it's an interest we have for the park, and we think it's necessary to acquire that property.
So when did they receive our offer?
I don't have that in front of me today. I think it would have been received the last few days of December. It might have been sent out the last day of
The reason I ask that is, do they have a certain number of, is there a timeline when they have to respond by?
So under the statute, we have to give them 30 days to consider our offer
Okay.
before we can proceed with any kind of litigation. We can give them more time than 30 days if we choose to, but we have to give them at least 30 days to consider our offer before we proceed with litigation. We have been negotiating somewhat with them, so at this point, I would speculate that our 30 days is not going to be a solid 30 day at that date. We're waiting to see on the second appraisal, and they seem to be negotiating in good faith as well, so.
Okay. That's important.
So I think, I don't see us filing litigation on the 30th day, because I think we're proceeding with negotiating this, and we were pleased with the meetings the meeting that we had with them and the information we've got with them so far. We're just, think they would like to have another appraisal as well, so we're waiting on that number. But again, you all know how appraisals go. We tend to think that we had a good appraiser do it. We expect the number's going to be fairly consistent regardless of who appraises it.
Who's responsible to make sure that there's no pollution on that site, since it was a gasoline station?
Well, we've already engaged in some studies to that. There's some environmental restrictive covenants that are in place that are on that property, that have been on that property for quite some time. Obviously, it being a filling station and having been a filling station for decades, it's got some environmental concerns. But that's all part of the process of what we're considering as far as what we can do with that. You know, we have concerns obviously with that being a vacant property right there, with it being a city park, having our lake next to it, those kind of things that what's going on with it right now is probably the worst thing. It's just sitting there vacant and has those environmental concerns. So.
And it's been vacant for a while.
Yes, Scott, I just wanted to give the board a little bit of background. The organization that owned this gas station basically vacated. They left the premises and just stopped operating the premises. And we contacted them probably 6-8 months ago to inquire about the disposition of the property, knowing that it was at the entrance to our park, and there would be, I think you go back in history, you know, the scrapyard used to be there, and it's been a long process of trying to clean up a lot of environmental things that don't really go well with a park. So when we found that the gas station had been vacated, we inquired as to the disposition of the property. And at the time, we just had a meeting telling them that we were interested. Again, this was probably 6-8 months ago. We hadn't heard anything, so we recontacted them. And as Scott suggested, we decided that an appraisal was important if we were to make any type of offer. And there's always we consulted with an environmental attorney and talked about the importance of a phase 1 study, which we did. We're in the process of that being finalized. So the due diligence with regards to that property and the restrictive covenants that have been placed on it by Indiana Department of Environmental Management, we are comfortable with what we've seen to make this type of offer. But as Scott said, that process has to continue to play out. This was all part of the Parks Department, part of their evaluation of the Central Park, and it was a pretty high priority item that potentially, if we had the opportunity to acquire the gas station, that they would like us to look into that. Obviously, the advantage then is that the gas station could be raised, and we could utilize that property just as a gateway into the park, potentially more parking. There's been other ideas. There's been talk of between the gardens of potentially using that property. So there's a lot of public use to that property, and again, having control, I think, over the just the environmental issues and knowing what they are, it makes sense for us to make that initial qualified offer. That qualified offer, again, was a good faith that we were required to do by statute, obviously knowing that we were coming here and that the time will play out in that we're in the process of that second appraisal, and we can't make any kind of deal until we get that second appraisal and get those averaged. So Scott's done a great job of getting you from the qualified offer forward. I just wanted to give you a little background on how the property came up and the wishes of the Parks Department, as well as essentially the abandonment of that property. So, and I'd be happy to take any questions on that property. Rick?
Okay, so there is some environmental situation there. Who is responsible for cleaning that up?
Well, those are all the questions that will be answered as we move ahead. I think, Scott, you can answer that to some extent. What we have found out was that what's on there right now is a restrictive covenant. In other words, you cannot draw water from the subsoil. And there's just certain things you're not allowed to do on the property. I think we've got a similar, a lot of brownfield or environmental sites have those similar restrictive covenants. They allow you to develop them, but there's just certain things you can't do. So it's not that there's any cleanup required at this point. The issue that created this problem has been resolved as far as items concerned. So now, you know, it's a gas station. It was operational till about 6-8 months ago. So, you know, there are potential for other issues. But again, those are things that typically municipality, especially in a public area like that, will have certainly an opportunity for cleanup funds to be able to apply for and be eligible for those types of cleanup funds that potentially a private owner may not have. Scott, and if you want to fill in the gap on that.
Well, I think that the short answer is we don't know who would specifically be responsible for it. There's been a chain of different owners over the last several decades. If we acquire it, likely it'll be the city of Warsaw that will do whatever's needed to be done to do further remediation if necessary. One advantage right now is under the environmental restrictive covenants that they have, some of the plans for some of the ideas that I've heard that it may be used for in a city park, it may not require significant things to be done as far as environmental cleanup to use it for some of the things that it's being considered to be used for. There's there was no further action required by IDEM previously when they put the environmental restrictive covenants on it. They just restricted things you could do, like the mayor said. You can't use it for groundwater, you can't grow crops there, you can't live there, those kind of things. But for some of the ideas that I've heard that it may be used for as a park, there may not be a ton more that necessarily needs to be done to comply with environmental restrictive covenants.
Okay.
If the city chooses to do more, it may choose to do that at some point. We know there's concerns because obviously it's been a filling station, and quite frankly, I think those are environmental concerns everywhere.
And those were our concerns right out of the chute, and that's why we consulted a specific environmental attorney from Taft out of Indianapolis that we posed those exact questions to. And having reviewed, they went back and did kind of an archive of environmental concerns there, and told us that, you know, our risk from what was shown was just restriction on how we could use it. So. And that was information that we sought out before we decided to consider an offer. And our city attorney and previous city attorney also were of the same opinion from the information that had been gathered from Taft and then from the Phase 1 study. None of that changed. It was all essentially as is. It's a restrictive covenant on what you can do on the property.
Okay.
So that's a great question, and that was my concern right out of the chute. And Jeremy and I and Scott and Mike Valentine spent a long time working through that with the environmental attorneys.
Joe, I would assume that if the city acquired that property, that the underground tanks would have to be removed.
Yes. Yep. And that's all part of the deal.
Okay.
I would think maybe too that the appraisers would probably factor a little bit of that. Surely it would diminish a little bit that it's been a filling station. I know we bought a, property down in Kokomo, that was an old auto dealership, and they kind of docked them on it because it had the potential for a problem or something like that. So it could be the appraisers, both of them come out a little lower than normal, just because they're factoring that in, maybe.
Yeah, and that has to be determined, obviously, but
Yeah.
the initial appraisal did not factor, that in. So
Do we have a time frame for the second appraisal yet? I mean,
it's been ordered.
it's one of.
Yeah,
up in
so
the
it's
air.
just a matter of, it's probably ordered a few weeks ago. It's just a matter of getting it executed and to us and next step.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is it safe to assume that since this is coming to us, that this organization will be the purchaser of the property? We'll buy, the redevelopment commission will buy the property and then turn it over to the city, or how will that work? Can you explain that to me?
I will defer to city attorney on that. Obviously,
Just curious more than anything.
obviously here as part of the redevelopment commission and that being in a redevelopment area, that gives us, the redevelopment commission, the opportunity to purchase that property.
I think that's why we're here, quite frankly, is,
Yeah.
that's why we're here seeking the approval of the redevelopment commission, because I think at the end of the day, it's gonna be this board's purchase.
Okay, if it's gonna be part of the park system then, I assume sometime we would be deeding that over to the park department?
I'm assuming that they would. It's really not much different than the Buffalo Street Plaza. That's all part of a redevelopment project, but the plaza improvements are all on park property. So, whoever the property is, I'm not sure exactly who the buyer would be. It would probably be the redevelopment commission. I don't know if it would be appropriate to turn it over. As long as the city of Warsaw or the redevelopment commission owns it, I can't answer that, but it would be one of the two, obviously.
Park Department's pretty much a subsidiary of the city of Warsaw, so city of Warsaw owns it eventually anyhow, my understanding. Okay. So, having this document in front of us, what would you like us to, what kind of action would you like us to take on this?
Well, like I said, we've moved forward with being in negotiations with property owners, and we would like permissions to continue to pursue the purchase of that property, and we'll probably be back before you at a different point if that's not successful, or negotiations, asking for permission to proceed in litigation against them, but at this point, we're hoping to be successful in our negotiations.
So we would agree with that.
So I'd ask that you approve moving forward with the negotiations to purchase the JP Food Mart property located at 443 North Detroit Street, if we can work those negotiations out with the owners.
I'd move we proceed as you stated.
Okay. Motion to, by Mr. Snodgrass to proceed with the negotiations, subject to second appraisal, and continue to negotiate in good faith.
I'll second that.
Mr. Clemens seconds that. Any further discussion? Mr. Mayor, would you
I
like
just
to add
wanted
something?
to add one more thought.
Sure.
There are many organizations and individuals in the gardens in this community that are very interested in this acquisition, and it's our understanding that they would be willing to support such a development of that property. So I think that's also partly weighing into our decision here, that the acquisition and redevelopment of that property, there's been a lot of interest expressed towards us that finally we have the opportunity to get this property. But I think there are groups that are willing to consider financially supporting this, so.
Great.
Yeah, that's kind of like the other park down there, yeah.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion.
Second?
Second.
And a second from Mr. Clemens.
George did.
George did.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, George.
Any further discussion? Anybody have any objection to pursuing this property?
No, I think it'd be an asset for the city and the park system.
Okay. Just want to make sure that everybody's on board with this. Sounds like, until we get the second appraisal, we should proceed with the good faith negotiations with the current property owners. Okay? All right. Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. So, we'll see where that leads us from now. Is there any additional business to come before this group? You have anything? Okay. Anybody else have anything? Thank you very much for your help this afternoon, Mr. Mayor. Okay, thank you very much. And the next meeting, as we just passed, will be February 4th. And we look forward to everyone meeting again next month on February 4th. Till then, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Before you guys leave, I've got your bonds ready to sign here.
Oh, okay.
You bet.
You guys can start working your way in there in order. Thanks, George.
Hey, your picture looked good.
What's that?
Just really quick, would you prefer I do it tomorrow or Wednesday? Because I saw Times Union did